Good morning. Good morning. It's time for the New York Times read along. We're delighted that you're all and that we are getting a chance to share and talk about the New York Times. It's a very cool, cold morning, but beautiful. Yesterday, I couldn't see out my window and my balcony, but today, as you can see, downtown New York, the Hudson River, and New Jersey. And as we learned from the musical Lin-Manuel Miranda, everything is legal in New Jersey. And I want to make sure that folks who are watching, want to make sure that anyone who's watching is getting a chance to share this with their friends and family around the world. Please tell us how your morning is going, what you're doing today, how your Sunday is. Some of you are already Sunday evening when you're watching this. We also want our guests to share this on their Facebook live. So our producers, our friends, tell us where you are. Tell us where you're watching from. Jonathan's watching from the East Village. Let's see who else is here. Just say hi. Tell us what you're up to. And if you haven't seen the New York City skyline in a while, look at these really tall buildings. The Empire State Building is shorter than those three buildings that you see up there. And all the way in the distance, you can glimpse the new World Trade Center. Johnny's watching from Italy. Good morning, Johnny. Great to have you. Sorry I missed you on this trip to Rome, but I will be back soon. And Happy New Year to everyone. Let me just flip the camera and say hi. Darshana is watching from Bangalore. She just came back from a protest against the new citizenship bills. And greetings. Thank you all for watching. Please connect with me on Twitter. I'm at Sree. Instagram is SreeNet. And LinkedIn too. We're now live on LinkedIn. This is only the fourth time we've been on LinkedIn. And I want to thank our wonderful executive producer. Oh, there's my son saying hi. I didn't mean to say hi. Jerry's watching from Guatemala City. That's amazing. Krishna, where are you going?
I'm going to Chinatown right now.
Yeah, it's going to Chinatown to help some folks learn English, right? You're going to English conversation. Is that right? Yeah. That's great. And yes, you can. Mahesh is watching from northeast of UK in Yarm, it says. And Ron, as I name these places, tell us if you've been to them, okay? So have you been to Yarm in England?
No, I haven't.
No, you haven't. Have you heard of it?
Not
yet. There you go. How about Paula's in Tallahassee, Florida?
I think so.
You have? Okay,
Yeah.
Let me sit down with you here. This
so.
is my guest, Ronald.
Yes.
You're going to hear more about him in a minute, but let's go through Tallahassee, Florida.
Tallahassee, Florida. Yes, years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paula's our producer,
Yeah,
and
Paula,
she lives there. Yeah, Paula. Thank you for that. East Village.
East Village.
Of
yes.
course, you. Who has not?
Yeah, the East Village. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, Bangalore.
Bangalore. Been to Bangalore.
You have?
Yes,
Okay. And Diane's watching from Margate, New Jersey. Manhattan skyline looks beautiful. Hanging with family, about to leave to go back to New York. Happy New Year.
Near Margate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you just came in this morning from Montclair, right?
From Verona.
Verona, which is
Verona. Yeah, which is the town above Montclair.
Oh, okay, very good. Akruti is watching from cold Buffalo.
Yes, Buffalo I've been to.
Yeah,
yes.
Buffalo is even colder today because they lost in the playoffs yesterday.
Oh,
so I don't know if you followed.
That was a great game.
Oh, you saw
that?
Yeah. And they've got a great young quarterback,
yes.
So they should be happy. Let's see. Pradnya is watching from Silver Spring outside Washington.
Yes, Silver Springs I've been to.
Okay, Lauren is watching from Metro Boston. Of course,
everybody.
Yeah, and thank you all for watching. I also want to thank our supporters and our sponsors at the Bombay Shirt Company, who sponsor my global speaking tour on social media. And that's why I'm wearing one of their shirts. But look at this guy. Look how well he's dressed on a Sunday morning. You got to make sure they see your pocket square. 1 second.
I've made contact with Bombay Shirts and DIFC.
Yeah, that's right.
They're located in DIFC.
I mean, this says
I haven't
something.
had time to go by there yet.
But you're going to go. I mean, it says something about the world that a shirt company in India can make custom shirts and have a store in Soho and Dubai.
Yeah. And DIFC is the Wall Street of Dubai.
Is that right?
Yeah. Financial Center.
Right. And Stefan, who you know well, and
Stefan, my man.
Yeah, Stefan's watching and listening from Ramsey, New Jersey.
Ramsey, yes.
Been
there.
You have been there.
Been there.
All right. And Center Reach, Long Island, Rahadyan's there?
Yes, been there.
Wow, okay. So let me say hi to Neil Parekh, who is our executive producer and an incredible guy who took this fun, not very serious thing that we're doing, kept it fun, but made it much more vital viewing around the world. We now have thousands of people every year who join us, including this guy who used to watch from a different part of the world every day. And we'll learn why he would be watching one day from Singapore, one day from Hong Kong, one day from Dubai. He'll tell us all those stories. Yeah. And Neil has really made this something. We are now entering our 5th year of doing this. And this is a love letter to print and news and all the stuff that's happening in the world. So important for us to pay attention. Yeah. And thank you all for watching. We also have a whole production team to put this together. Neil's using a tool called StreamYard. Paula's doing Facebook, and Steve Taylor, who's watching from Philadelphia, is on LinkedIn. Okay. So it takes an army to do this, and we're grateful to everyone. We also have put in everyone's Twitter handles. Please follow them. And Ron's Twitter handle is at Ronald_Thomas, yes, right?
Correct.
And
I had to think about it.
Yeah. On Facebook, he's Focused HR. LinkedIn, he's Ron Thomas HR. Yes. And his website is strategyfocusedgroup.com. So strategyfocusedgroup.com. I also want to say hello to a friend who is here, and I'm just going to say hi. Let's see, we just flip the camera. That's Vandana. I mean, you're sort of a little backlit, but tell us who you are. And
hi, I'm Vandana. I just graduated from grad school and
at University of Pennsylvania.
At the University of Pennsylvania, and I did history and anthropology, and I'm excited to be here this morning.
All right, and you're in Philly, and for the most part, and we have one of our producers, Steve Taylor, lives in Philly, so I hope you will get a chance to say hi to him, and we'll hear also some of her perspectives on what's happening in the news. All right, so let's get started. There's a lot of news to talk about. Ron, tell us first a little bit about yourself and your work and a little bit of your backstory.
I started here in New York. I worked for Martha Stewart for 9 years, and I was there during the time she did go away, which was very interesting. And I left there and I went to work for Xerox, their consulting practice. And I came in one day and there was an email from a search firm based in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, asking me whether I would be interested in moving or applying for a role as Chief Human Resource and Administrative Officer in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And my office was on 47th and Park. And I didn't give it a second thought. I said, I'd never really lived as an expat, although I did go to China. I did some work in China back in around 2008, and I was there for a couple of weeks. So I decided to really put everything into it to go for this role. And within a matter of 6 weeks, I was hired, and I left New York and I flew into Saudi, and it was 120 degrees when I got off the flight. And had a driver to pick me up, took me to a 6,000 square foot villa that I lived in by myself. And it was kind of it was 180 degrees from New York City, and I'll just leave it like that. So I stayed there for a little over a year, and there was an opportunity came up for a great place to work. And I pursued that role as CEO for a great place to work based out of their Dubai office. And that's how I was able to transition from Saudi to Dubai. And Dubai led to a host of other opportunities, speaking opportunities. And so what I finally decided to do was to open up my own firm after a year, a little over a year. And that firm is Strategy Focus Group. And I got my business license on a Wednesday. I had projects starting on the Tuesday of the following week, and it hasn't let up. So as I'm listening to the show every week, I'm always in a different city for the most part. And that's because I have clients basically throughout Asia. All of some clients are building up now in Europe and as well as the Middle East. So I travel possibly 3 weeks out of the month. And I'm normally in Dubai maybe 1 week, and it's kind of like changing clothes, changing luggage to get back out on the road. So interesting life at this stage of the game. So everything is cool.
And your advice for anyone who's thinking of moving from New York and living as an expat, kind of an American living an expat in the Middle East?
Pursue it. I know 3 or 4 people I'm working with now who are making that transition. One just moved to France. Another one just moved to London last week. If there's an opportunity to do it, you will never regret it, because my thought was, when this email came through, if I did not pursue it, I would always regret it. When I was in Dubai as the CEO of Great Place to Work, and I was deciding what was going to be next, I said, if I did not try and open a firm, it would always be in the back of my mind. I could have tried it. But so I say, if it comes to you and there's that opportunity, try it, because you'll never forgive yourself if you reflect upon it later in life.
Wow, that's great advice. And you're going to hear a lot of good career advice, because Ron's an expert on many things, including careers and that part of work, part of your of what we do. A couple of notes before we move to the newspapers. Pradnya says, "You're so fancy for a Sunday morning."
Well, I've looked at your other guests coming in, and everybody tends to be fancy. I mean, I could have come over in sweats. I came over last Sunday. I was very casual, but I was not going to do this because I know people see, who is this guy always logging in from some part of the world? Right. So I said, well, let me live up to that. I put on the Start shirt and
nice,
suit.
Nice. And it's Sunday, and you're also having people over later, right?
Having people over later, yeah.
So the party's at his place in Verona, so we're all heading out there after.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about food and travel, and so there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm going to give you a chance to get on your phone and make sure you're sharing this on all your platforms, so that you can just hit share, so your friends can join us. And everybody, please hit share right now, so that everyone can learn from Ron and also look at the news. And we're going to ask Vandana to keep an eye on Twitter. If there are any comments or anything, she's going to jump in as well. And let's look at the news. There's obviously so much happening in the world, and there may be breaking news at any point. By the way, my dad's watching from Kerala in India. Have you been to Kerala in the south?
No.
So Bangalore is the furthest you've been.
I've been to Bangalore, Mumbai, Goa.
Nice.
So I've been kind of. I go to Mumbai every February because there's a big HR conference there.
Nice. Stefan says, strategy focus group is such a strong name. Great branding is everything.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, is that good? That's a good observation, so people can understand what you do. In fact, when we named our company Digi Mentors, we say everyone needs a digital mentor, and so that's how we came up with that. So being really clear is effective. All right. So Trump's choice of killing stunned defense officials. Call made despite dispute on intelligence that warned of new threats. And this was really the way they've laid it out here. And this is managing your boss. What they often do is they'll put an extreme idea on the list of menu of choices so that your boss picks something, less extreme. Yes. In this case, he picked the most extreme because he was so upset about the what happened in Iraq with the embassy. So he decided to do that. And I think partly he made his presidential campaign hinged a lot on Benghazi. And he wanted to make sure that is not another Benghazi for him. So Iran, divided politically, unites in its hostility toward America. More powers, few limits, and a volatile president. This is kind of captures the kind of overall story of what's happening. Do you worry you're going back into the region tomorrow?
I don't give it a second thought. Not the least bit concerned, because it's not really about me. And there's a lot of other underpinnings of that I don't really want to go into. But as I was telling you earlier, I've done work in Iran, and I have an Iranian visa because I did some work for their major telecom there, MTN. And right before I left, I sent in another proposal for leadership development for that same group. So that's pretty much by the wayside. That's not going to happen now in this climate. But I don't really concern myself for fear.
Amazing.
Never. But, I've always looked at life as that when it's your time, I can be sitting here having dinner and I can keel over.
Right.
So for me to worry about things like that, I never give it a second thought.
That's a great attitude in life. Lotte is watching from Bhutan. Have you been?
No.
All right. My dad is weighing in, and he says that we lived in Bhutan when I was less than a year old. He worked for the Indian embassy, and so we were there. And he's saying that there's much concern in India about the situation in the Gulf, and my dad wrote a column about it in one of his many columns that he writes. So I'm going to ask my dad to put the link in the comments if he can find it and put it in there. That'd be great. What else is happening? Atomic bomb of fires sends nation on the run. What's happening in Australia is incredibly sad, and just so helpless when you watch this, just like we did in California last year.
Yeah, I read the article about the number of animals that were killed as a result of this fire, and it's just so sad.
400 million animals, not counting frogs and insects.
Exactly. And that's
since September.
Yes, that was the piece that really kind of stood out for me. All the lives that's going to be lost, property is damaged, but the animals, through no fault of their own, just being in the wrong place,
right?
At the wrong time.
Australia is such a wonderful country.
It is, yeah. So,
what is your favorite city?
I've been to Sydney. I was in Sydney maybe 3-4 months ago, but only for 2 days. So I was there working. I got in there at night. I went to work that next day. I left work, and I had another meeting until maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So you didn't see anything?
Didn't see it, which is kind of the story of my life.
Yeah.
And if I go to a city, I try and get there on a Saturday morning, if it's a new city. So if I get there on a Saturday, I can do the sightseeing stuff for a full day. And that way, Sunday, I'll rest and get prepared, ready for our show. And then on Monday, I go to work.
That's great. Jacqueline Monk is watching and says, hello from Queens.
Oh,
great choice to hear Ron Thomas tell his inspiring story.
She and I had breakfast the other morning.
Oh, nice.
On Friday morning. She's the new managing editor for the Wall Street Journal weekend edition.
Nice. Yeah, we have, by the way, part of that over here, the Journal also. And I should tell Jacqueline that we'd love to have her and Matt Murray, the editor-in-chief, do a read along with the Wall Street Journal. We've done the Washington Post, we've done the Globe and Mail, we've done the Bergen Record. And this is the current cover or the next cover?
This is the current cover.
Nice.
See, Jackie, I took pictures of this as we were talking.
Look at that. Helping promote it. That's awesome. Yeah. That's really great. Look at The Rock.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. That's okay. Let's see what else is happening here. It's Fox News for teenagers in short videos. That's what the world needs more of. More kinds of Fox News. I don't know what the name of this website is. They haven't put it in the first 3 paragraphs that I can see. But Silicon Skyline, tech hub rises in Manhattan. It used to be called Silicon Alley. And here is Tara is here. She's saying hi to our guest, Vandana. Sharon says, what a great perspective, Ron, and realistic approach to life. Sharon Flanagan says that. Cool. So it's and Tara says hello to you. Tara, welcome back. She and my daughter went out for their morning walk. This is you said you're a internet guy, right? You don't get print much because you're traveling so much.
You're traveling so much, and even on flights you can always pick up the New York Times, but this may be 10 pages.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not
the international New York Times.
International piece. So it's funny because in the airlines, as you load the flight, they still come around with the cart of the newspapers.
Yes.
And there's kind of a demographic look at it because you'll find that the younger people on the flight will always say no, and the older people will right away they're taking 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
One from A, one from B, one from C, kind of thing. And the other people are saying no, I have it here.
Yeah, I love this little section where they go back in history, and this is on this day in history in 1926. A.E. Lefcourt was 9 years old. He was selling newspapers on a corner of Broadway and 38th Street in front of the Hotel Normandy. And now he owns skyscrapers, including that entire property. So owns the corner where he once sold papers. So that says something about, you never know. How to travel sustainably, what to eat. Do you worry about your carbon footprint when you travel?
Not really.
Okay.
I tend to eat at local places. In Asia, you'll always it's about the markets as opposed to the restaurants. So you'll go out and there's a market when they have every possible piece of cuisine from that particular country that's there. And I tend to eat there. I don't really go to restaurants that much when I travel. I try and find out where the food market is, and I go there.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. And what about all these jet miles you're doing? Is the cost of doing business?
It's the cost of doing business. I can't, how else am I going to get from Dubai to Singapore?
Right.
I mean, I can't do that. So I fly all the time, and to me, flying is peace of mind. That may sound strange, but to me, the comfort zone is going to the airport.
Wow.
Yeah, getting to go to the airport and see, because I fly out of Dubai and I fly so much, I tend to know the people at the counter. When I get to the flight, sometimes the same flight crew is there. I see the same pilot sometimes. I always get the 5:55 flight, Cathay Pacific, to Hong Kong. And I tend to know people on there. I know people in the lounges. So to me, it's like kind of coming home, an artificial kind of home setting.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I bet a lot of people who travel like that have that. I showed someone how much I traveled last 2018. I traveled 250,000 miles, and somebody said, you should worry about your carbon footprint. So I went and looked online. There's something called carbonfund.org where you can actually buy your personal offset. And so that's about, according to that, I owe Mother Nature $275. So that's not so bad.
I'm not even going to calculate.
Yeah, exactly. So what they're saying is, try eating vegetarian or vegan, pack snacks, follow the locals, make sustainable choices, but sometimes relax your rules, do whatever you need to. So this is here to help. Ex-Fed chair says old methods won't do in downturn. Are you worried that there's going to be a global downturn even before this possible war?
There's already a downturn in Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
My business was formed in Dubai, but I found that the projects were becoming less and less. So what happened as a result, we made a partnership with a firm in Singapore, and that kind of picked up from the loss in Dubai. And there's a lot of companies that have gone out of business, people that, like myself, who started small firms, who really struggle. But my lifeline has been the Asian market, because Dubai has been hit, and it's still going to be hit a lot further in moving forward.
And do you still see yourself going to be based out of Dubai for some time?
Well, my partners are saying, because I opened an office in Singapore a little over a year ago, and they were saying, why don't you just move to Singapore? I'm not moving. The hassle of going through all of that. No. So I'll just do the Asia, Dubai, back to New York, kind of triangle.
What a triangle.
Yeah.
I want to mention someone who's very successful, a guy named Ram Charan,
Yes.
who is a big time guru. He's like Jack Welch's guru.
Yes.
He doesn't have a fixed address of any kind. He lives in hotels around the world, hasn't had a paid rent or a home in 40, 50 years. He has an assistant who, based in Dallas, who ships and brings back his laundry and does it around the world. There's some kind of arrangement like that. Can you?
Yeah, I know quite a few people that do that.
Really?
Yeah, I know quite a few people. But another buddy of mine does the same thing. He basically gave up his apartment.
Right.
And went wherever he is until the next project, he stays there. And then he goes to wherever he needs to go beyond that. I know another friend who's very wealthy. When he goes to a tailor, he'll get suits made he gets in triplicates. And he ships them to every location that so that way he doesn't have to travel with luggage.
Right.
He just goes there and everything is there. I mean, you can do that when you have the kind
resources.
Of
Resources
to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's see. U.S. military branches block access to TikTok. You hear a lot about TikTok these days, right?
Yeah, I posted on the site.
Yeah.
Because in Dubai they banned TikTok. Well, a lot of stuff is banned in Dubai.
Right.
FaceTime is banned in Dubai. WhatsApp calling, Facebook calling. But the business leaders are now saying we need to stop this because these are business tools, specifically Skype.
Right.
And the gentleman that built the Burj Khalifa gave a big speech here maybe 6 months ago. And he told the rulers that we really need to consider, if you want to see Dubai as the business hub, and then you're blocking Skype. Skype is a business tool, and it has to be considered. But the challenge is that the telecoms are owned by the government. There's Eddie Salat and then there's Stu. They're owned by the government. And 80% of the population is expats, which means people are calling from back to their countries or whatever it is. Once that goes into effect, all that revenue drops from both of those business models. And I think they're trying to figure out how they're going to kind of maintain doing this transition.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're right about the number of expats. It's amazing. Since we have a young person in the room, let's ask her about TikTok. And this is Vandana Mohan, who is joining us here today. She's been tweeting about the show. She's Vandana_Mohan on Twitter. So tell us about TikTok. Is it, what is its context in your life and the life of your peers?
It's just really entertaining. It's really fun to watch. I think TikTok is really popular, especially with young people in India, because it's a more accessible app than Instagram or Twitter. So people enjoy it because you can use it to like dance and make videos and play pranks, and it's extremely popular across all socioeconomic backgrounds, which is why it has such a big reach.
But why is it bigger? Why did you say it's easier than Instagram? I mean, people are on Instagram. There was Vine before that. There's YouTube. So what makes it about this? Is it the music?
It's the
DNA
music,
of it?
It's the music. It's that there's a lot of Indian songs, Indian scenes that can be acted out on TikTok, and Instagram sort of is more elite in that way.
Okay.
And TikTok is far more accessible to people.
Yeah, you see farmers and other people using it.
Everyone's on TikTok doing fun things. It's also, I think there's a novelty in being able to record yourself and your friends, do something fun, and then post it on the internet, and people see it, and it's a different user experience than something like Instagram.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So my question would be, and you're a social expert, how could you integrate a TikTok into a business social media strategy?
Yeah, I think
people
are doing that. Yeah, the Washington Post has 2 full-time people doing TikTok.
Really?
And we should do a read along with them just to understand what they're doing. The Red Cross, International Red Cross, is a whole TikTok strategy and a thing. So I think what it is a way to cut through the noise. And because it's so clever, and if done right, I mean, one of the things, by the way, my kids were horrified when I told them that I'm on TikTok. I'm Sree.net on TikTok. I've only done a couple of when your dad joined TikTok, and they said, don't be another Indian dad on TikTok. Don't be another dad on TikTok. And I said, Will Smith is on TikTok, and they said he's a dad, but he said you're no Will Smith.
Brutally honest, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's my daughter making breakfast. Say hi, Durga. Hi. She has something to tell us later, right? Or do you want to tell us now?
Later.
All right, she's going to tell us something later. So everybody stay tuned. We also have some great questions coming in. And because of this new system, StreamYard, we're using, we were able to get some questions earlier. So if I miss those questions, I'm going to ask Neil to please throw them back out here. And Ron asked, let's see, Arlene asked a question. She said, thank you for joining the crowd this morning. I'm curious to know, what are some of the challenges of working in Dubai and other countries in terms of time, women in the workplace, work schedules? I've never been, she says.
Okay. That was a major challenge in Saudi Arabia, although it's different now because I was just there maybe a month ago and things are different. I was sitting in a hotel lobby and there were women sitting around, women and men sitting around. That may sound strange as why am I saying that? Because years ago you could not do that. If you were sitting in the lobby with a woman, that had to be your wife. So even at conferences, there was one side for female, one side for males. I facilitated sessions there, and the room was basically split, female on one side, men on the other side. All that's changed now with the new leader that's there, and he's kind of opened that up. So now, I was there maybe I think a couple of months ago. Was there for a week, and you see women that are driving cars now. That may sound. Every time I say that, it sounds so strange, but you got to realize this was a culture that women weren't allowed to drive. And now they are allowed to drive, and everybody has license, and that's kind of the way that it works. That is the only area that you have those kind of challenges. If you go to Singapore, the demographics are skewed younger for the population there. Hong Kong is the same. So I would say the Middle East, probably Saudi Arabia, was ground zero for the kind of issues you're talking about. But the other the other countries there and regions there, it's the same as any other place. There's no real differentiation.
What is Me Too movement in the rest of the world? Has it come to the Middle East? Has there been some reforms?
It's been talked about. I think more reforms have come through from the Saudi side, and these kinds of things that have come up. And one discussion,
because they had the most to change, right?
They have the most to change. Right. Everyone else is pretty much there, and so you got to figure, if you have a population that's been managed by men, and all of a sudden there's a woman who gets that role, how are the men going to feel about having a woman manage them? It sounds so archaic just even talking through this, but that's being dealt with very rigid. If something is done out of place for a worker towards a woman that's a boss, they deal with it right up front because they're saying the culture is going to change and it has to change.
Arlene also asks, I'm interested in finding out, how do you position or reframe the value of older, over 50 people in the workplace to management and to colleagues from both an institutional position and from colleague to colleague? I think this is something that's really important. How do you, when you're working with folks, how do you position people? Because everybody seems to want to hire, Vandana and company, which she doesn't mind, but we do as people on the other side.
So if you look at the cultures of the Middle East, you will find that's an issue because you have in a lot of cases the demographics of a workforce may skew a little older. In a lot of the Asian cultures, people get one job and they stay there the rest of their lives. A gentleman told me the other week that he had a retirement party the night before for their employees that had been there for 35 years. No company wants to have that anymore. And it has nothing to do with the DNA of a workforce. It has to do with innovation. It has to do with looking at a new way of thinking, a new way of doing business, questioning the ways that things are being done at this point. And lots of times you may need to bring in people from a different area as it relates to the age piece. But it's a major challenge. It's a major challenge in older cultures. One of the questions I tend to ask people, what's the average age of your workforce? What was the average age of your workforce 5 years ago? Everywhere you look, the average age of a workforce is trending younger. And that's from the US over to any region. This is what's happening today. So it's something that all companies are going to have to deal with. And I think the transition point is going to be from that worker who feels comfortable maybe having someone that could be their daughter or son managing them. That's going to be the challenge.
So what is your advice to people who find themselves in either position, managing someone older or being managed by someone younger?
Give any person in any given situation, you have to give them a chance. And you have to be open-minded. And that's kind of I just wrote an article the other week, last night as a matter of fact, on understanding a new level of leadership. And that means being more collaborative, bringing more people into the arena and trying to make decisions. And that could be someone that's 21, 22 years old, could have a totally different perspective from someone that's 35, 40, or 50 years old.
Right.
So you never know where that nugget is going to come from. But if you create that environment in that team, every voice is valued, you can create the kind of persona that you'd want for that particular team.
Pradnya asks, have you personally experienced any challenges in terms of racial discrimination in the region?
None. Absolutely none. Because a lot of the people in the Middle East look like me. I've never.
At airports,
Only when I get to London, I've seen situations in London, flying back. I tell the story of a situation. I was coming from Dubai, I stopped in London, and in London you have to make a change, and you have to go through to security again. Right. And there was a gentleman who had come through, was rushing to get to a flight, and was trying to rush the guy. And the guy said, "Sir, I have to go through all of this stuff." And he says, "Well, this is why you don't have any education. This is why you're doing a job like this. Because this is the only kind of work you can do."
Ooh.
And this was a white gentleman who told an Indian gentleman this. And he says, "Oh, no, you didn't tell me that." He said, you know what, let's go through all of your bags. And he went through everything, and everybody was sitting there watching it. And it was kind of a shock to me from being out of that environment where you see these kind of things, because you don't see it in the Middle East. At least I've never witnessed it.
Jay says in the US and Europe, there are fewer younger people entering the workforce, so that over time, that should allow more opportunities for older workers. So is that how you see it?
Well, I know a lot of people that are going through, I'll say, transition now. You know, maybe they were laid off from their jobs and they're trying to figure out what 2.0 version would be. And I always tell them to concentrate on the solutions you provided for companies. It means nothing about how many degrees you have and the title you had in a past life. What it does mean is that did you provide solutions to that organization?
And value.
And value.
Right.
Can you walk them through a scenario where there was a huge problem? You came in, you looked at it, you parsed it, and you were able to drive some solution. That's what you talk about, because that's what companies are looking for, even if you're 60 or 70 years old.
Right. That's really helpful. And look, this is a relatively a story that's important because everybody's scared. An aging mill mirrors Italy's woes. And this is about an ArcelorMittal steel plant. And by the way, Mittal is an Indian family that owns a lot of big steel companies in Europe and elsewhere. And Vandana, jump in anytime if you have a question for Ron or if you see anything that's coming up. And Inuit right restored, to give birth where my family is. And this is about using midwives and give birth in their hometowns rather than being pressured to travel south to a hospital. And so this is on a map. Look how far north this is.
Wow.
I was, by the way, recently in Stockholm, and that was the furthest north I've ever been. And sunset was at 2:15. And have you traveled that far north? Have you been Scandinavia?
I'm working on a project when I get back on Wednesday in Geneva.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we got a call
Right.
on the Geneva project.
Right.
And that goes through. I'll probably be flying out there probably the next week.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. An archaic Jewish text attracts a new audience. Women gravitate to study of the Talmud. Huge protests in India keep steadfast pressure on Modi, and this is the protests that are happening about these new citizenship bills that have been passed. More about, look at this, atomic bomb of wildfires.
Wow.
False news comes true as Beijing replaces its top representative in Hong Kong. After protests and an electoral rebuff, China sends in an enforcer. A volatile president, and that story we saw already. Cries of revenge is coming at funerals for 2 slain commanders. White House notifies Congress of deadly drone strike under War Powers Act. After the fact. Will strike deter attacks or lead to even more? And this is the question. But we heard from Ron; he's flying into that region and is not worried. Lawsuit leads to a downturn spiral at Dartmouth. An academic despaired over what he said was a false account of his actions. His anguish proved too much to bear. The family in mourning. So this is a story of David Bucci above, who grew deeply depressed over a lawsuit against Dartmouth College, accused of enabling abuse.
Wow.
The lawsuit spotlighted exploitation university departments where graduate students rely heavily on the approval of professors. And this is, of course, a big issue in the academic world. 3,500 soldiers mobilized. A whirlwind whips through Fort Bragg in North Carolina. Yeah.
I saw them shipping out.
Yeah. Look at this unusual obit, an ad taken out in memoriam of David Stern, who had such an impact in the basketball world. But it's from Jazz at Lincoln Center, where he must have been a board member or something like that. And
also, it's not an obit in the obit.
right. Yeah. There may have already been one in there. We'd see that. As tech titans expand presence in Manhattan, Silicon skyline emerges. Let's see. With vote split on impeachment, Maine Democrat risks dual backlash. Generation Z. Fox News for Generation Z. What is the name of this project, though? They still haven't. Did you figure out what it's called?
No.
It's called PragerU. It's named after.
Is that going to be social media?
I don't know. A growing hub of online right-wing media. Ugh. I guess named after, I think, Dennis Prager, who's like a right-wing guy.
Right.
So it's not a university, but it's going to affect university. Know your right to know. Protectpressfreedom.org. Yeah, we need press freedom, especially at a time when the president calls us enemy of the people. And here's the obit section. Woody Wasulka, who foresaw video as art, dies at 82. What are your favorite museum? Do you have time to go to museums? And
in Dubai, they just opened up a new Emirati museum. It's not far from where I live, and I took our weekend is Friday and Saturday, so I took some time to go through that. And if I go to a city, and that's on my tourist day, I will try and always find a museum to go to if it's nearby, if it's not too far out of the way.
Nice. Yeah. That's good. Peter Schreier, elegant German tenor who became a conductor, dies at 84. And Heather Ashton, 90, helped people quit drugs. And she was a doctor, and a doctor who realized Valium and Xanax were addictive. So those kinds of drugs. And we actually have some great New York Times guests coming up in the future, including next week. So we want to talk about the travel section. Here it is. The editor of the travel section, Amy Vershup, is going to have us over at her home in New York to talk about the New York Times travel section. And Neil has put up a nice little poster, and Amy Vershup is her name. Follow her on Twitter, folks, at Amy Vershup. And Seb Modak is going to be with her, which is going to be amazing. Seb was the 52 places traveler, Sebastian Modak, and he is going to be with her. So this is his last posting, and then they're going to unveil the 52 places to go in 2020. And Amy's going to talk about that this week. So it's very exciting. It's on Sunday. Please join us. I'm unfortunately going to be traveling, but Neil's going to come up from Washington and interview Amy. It's going to be amazing. So everybody, please tune in 8:30 a.m. Sunday next week. It's going to be amazing.
It must have been a nice project to work on.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh my God. Yeah, you probably go to 52 places. Yeah, exactly. What's the most special place you've ever traveled?
I tend to like Kuala Lumpur.
Really?
Yeah, if people say, "Oh my God, I thought you would have said Singapore or some other city." I like Kuala Lumpur because it reminds me a lot of New York. With the old New York, the alleyways and public transportation is great. I tend to feel like a local there. I know a lot of people there, so I would say of all the places, I look forward to going to KL.
All right, that's
kind of my.
We asked all our guests that, and no one said that yet. So that's great. A new art museum adds to Sarasota's cultural heritage. A compelling argument for a place in Paris. Yeah. So there are a lot of places to eat there. Well, what are your favorite travel gadgets, or do you have like a bag that you like? What do you give us some travel hacks?
Okay, I have gone through so much luggage, and I was 2-3 trips, beautiful suitcase, the wheels would fall off. So I decided to invest in a good set of luggage, and I bought 2 Rimowa.
How do you spell that?
Rimowa.
Okay.
Extremely expensive.
Right, I've not even heard of it. That means it's a different world.
And I've had it now for over a year. Nothing. One handle came off. I took it to their store, and within an hour they fixed it. You have lifetime guarantee.
Yeah, my dad always says that it's better to invest in things that instead of like having it. 4 or 5 of them die on you.
Exactly.
You gotta invest that way.
Yeah, and I picked up that from buying these cords, the charger cords. You
right.
buy the cheap ones.
Yes.
And they last you maybe a month. So I just go to Apple and buy them when I see an Apple store. That way I'll have them.
The original, yeah.
So Rimowa is my luggage of choice. My travel app, I use TripIt.
Yeah, I love
because it reads my emails and it puts in the gate numbers and all those kinds of things. When I get off the flight, it tells me where my luggage is. I tend to check everything. I don't want to carry anything on the flight but my briefcase.
Oh, so you're an unusual traveler that way, because a lot of people are the opposite, right? They don't want to check in because they don't want to wait. but you're okay with waiting and not carrying a bunch of stuff on the flight.
I'm not really going to wait because if you travel business class, your bags are the first ones to come down. So they're the first ones to come down.
Right.
Sometimes I come down, my bag is there when I get there. I pick it up and I'm gone from there. So Tripit I use because that organizes everything. My reading is done through an app called
Pocket.
Get Pocket.
Right.
Because I can look at an article and I can say save the pocket. And I do this when I get there and I open my app up. All of my reading material is there and I can edit. I have the pro version. I can edit, share it, and do all these things with it. So those are probably my top 3.
Nice. Very, very good advice. Thank you. Let's see. Real estate. You're saying there's a good time to get real estate in Dubai because the economy is not doing too well. Yeah. Did you ever consider investing in New York City? I know you invested elsewhere.
In Jersey.
Right. So. And let's see. Yeah.
Just to jump in.
Yeah.
PragerU is short for Prager University, and it's apparently run by this man named Prager, who's a conservative radio host, and he has about 200-300 videos on YouTube, and each video is like 5 minutes long, and each video takes about $25,000 to $30,000 to make.
Oh my God!
And they spend a lot. I think they have an annual budget of $10 million and spend a lot of it on advertising.
Wow!
And
who's funding that?
I don't know. It's interesting because with that budget, we should be seeing a lot more of it. It's been around for 10 years.
Wow! And you're a Gen Z person, and you haven't heard of it. So
a 5-minute video at $25,000.
Yeah. What is happening in these videos?
Yeah.
Look at some of these prices in New York. You remember when prices in New York were not so outrageous?
When you come to New York now and you see areas that were on its heel, and now you see a condo there. Yeah. And it's amazing how things have transitioned. Right.
We have a question from LinkedIn. What U.S. HR policies are outdated or obsolete? U.S. HR policies. It's like, what do you think? I'll let you think about that for a minute. Yeah. Meanwhile, just to remind everyone, you can see us live on Facebook and LinkedIn every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. Please follow me on LinkedIn. I'm Sree Srinivasan. You can find me and also connect with me on Facebook, Sree Srinivasan. And you can also find me on Twitter at Sree and Instagram. I'm SreeNet. Please follow our executive producer, Neil Parekh, at Neil Parekh on all the platforms. And our other producers, Steve Taylor is Steve Derive at Steve Derive, and Paula Kiger is at Big Green Pen. So please follow all these folks who are doing this as a labor of love to get you the news and interesting people all at the same time. Every Sunday, 8:30 to 10 a.m. Eastern time. So the question was, what are things happening in HR in America which are more obsolete compared to other places?
Well, I talk about trends. Workforce flexibility is probably number one. And when I moved to Saudi Arabia, I was really amazed by the number of rules and policies and procedures. So the HR department there played the role of the police. If you were in a half hour late, you were owed an hour to the company on the back end. So
wait, half hour late? You owe an hour, not a half hour.
So my thought was, what's the logic behind that one?
Right.
There was no logic behind it. That was just the rule in the way that it was. So when you think of the HR policies in the U.S. that are obsolete, I think there needs to be a lot more flexibility because the workforce is changing. I know a lot of people are sick of hearing about the millennials and the needs of these people, those kinds of comments. But that's your new workforce. The same as if you had clients and your clients' tastes change, you would adapt to that.
Yeah, you don't expect them to change, right?
You have to change with that. So the policies has to have more flexibility, and you must listen to people. I'm always amazed by HR groups that will try and design an HR initiative for a workforce, and they never talk to the workforce. They design what I call by conference room. All the HR people get into the room and say, here's what we're going to do. This will work. Here's how we're going to do it. And they don't take change into consideration, the change process into consideration. They don't take the audience that's going to be impacted, whether they have gotten input from them. So I would say a little more collaborative in the initiatives that you have. test those from time to time, look at the metrics, how is it being used, who's using it, who's not using it, and kind of take a business approach to human resources.
Business approach. I like that. The question was from Christopher Fields on LinkedIn.
Chris Fields, that's my friend.
Oh, nice.
Resume expert.
Resume expert. All right. Chris, also, everyone, please join us on our closed Facebook group called Sree's Advanced Social, Sree apostrophe S Advanced Social, a good place for you to learn, as I do every day, from amazing folks around the world. Very high signal to noise ratio. Horses and historic sites abound in this town, Bedminster, New Jersey, one of the homes of President Trump. It's about 44 miles out of New York City. Have you been to Bedminster?
No, I haven't been to Bedminster, but I grew up in the South Carolina, and we had a horse growing up. Yeah, but during that era, you could have a horse and live in town. You didn't have to live on a farm. But that's changed now. You can't have a horse and live in town. You can have chickens, but you can't have a rooster. All those kinds of things came about. But that's a good pet to have, a horse, because a lot of responsibility goes with a horse. It's not like a dog. They have to be fed. Their stable has to be cleaned out. And my father said, I'll get it for you, but you're responsible for taking care of it.
So you asked for this. Oh my God. Oh my
Yes.
God.
He obliged, but it was a lot of work. And after a period of time, we got a little sick of it and we got rid of the horse.
Oh, Danielle says, good morning from Southern Maine. Have you been?
Bar Harbor.
Bar Harbor.
Years ago.
Okay. Carla's tuning in from New Jersey. Tell us about your dad.
My dad was a small businessman in Marion, South Carolina, owned a taxi company, amazing gentleman. When I look back at leaders and I think of people that I learned from, I would say he was number one. I'd look forward to him coming home at night, sitting in his easy chair and just talking about life. And I was kind of like a sponge. I just took it all in. My other brothers would say, yeah, he's just on a rampage again about something. But I always listened to what he was saying. I always listened to his insight. Not a lot of education. I think he quit school in like 8th grade or whatever it is because of family circumstances, but he was very successful. And I just learned so much from him. And even to this day, I think about some of the sayings that he kind of, talked about. Build, you dig the well before you need the water. All these kinds of little things. And I think about myself, yeah, he always would say these kinds of things. So he was kind of is, and still always will be my hero as it relates to business.
And your mom?
My mom was a housewife. She baked every day. She baked every day. So every day we came home, there was baked cookies, there was pies, cakes.
Oh my God, that's
yeah. So we never had a Nabisco product in our home. The only thing we had in our home was Nabisco product was vanilla wafers, when she would make banana pudding.
Okay, for Nilla, the Nilla.
Yeah, Nilla wafers, or whatever it's called. And that was it, because
otherwise she did all the baking.
She did all the baking,
Oh my
and
God.
every day there was a treat. But the catch was you had to eat your dinner before you got to
The
you had
treat.
to eat your way through the meal before you got to the dessert. So when I went to work for Martha Stewart, it was like coming home, because it was all about food, cooking,
Right.
and all those kinds of things. So I'd go down to the test kitchens, and they were baking, and it was probably the perfect job for me based on my childhood.
But you don't look like you ate a lot of cakes and
Well,
stuff.
I don't bake. I'm a very good baker. I don't bake anymore, because if I bake 2 dozen cookies, I may eat a dozen of them. So I tend to stay away from baking today. I don't really bake that much.
Right. And what about exercise?
I'm a gym rat every morning.
Every morning.
Every morning, if I'm in town, if I'm not in town, I'm using the hotel gym. I do something. I walk a lot. I have this app that I use, and my goal is 10,000 steps per day.
That's right. That's mine too. Yeah.
Yeah. So some days I make it, some days I don't.
And sometimes you do double that, right?
Sometimes in Singapore the other week I did 20,000.
Nice.
Because I walked every.
That's 10 miles.
Yes.
Almost 20 kilometers.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What do you do in the gym?
I have my routine. I do the elliptical, or I'll do the bike. That's a half hour, and then I spend the next half hour on weights. Upper body for the most part.
And that's important, right? People don't focus on that.
Yeah. Well, see, this is another thing that my father always said, that the older you get, the less you eat, and the more you exercise. But he was overweight, but it was his way of looking at it, and it makes sense. So I don't eat as much, like the meals and whatnot. I'm just going to nibble kind of thing. don't do a lot of it. And I try and do more exercise.
All right. Well, we've got to get back to the paper.
Okay.
You're so interesting, but we got to get to the paper. Let's see. Open Secrets is a New York Times Sunday review. Novelists, poets, and artists imagine life in the age of surveillance, including a short story by Gish Chen, a poem by Robert Pinsky. Wow. So they really put in a whole issue around surveillance. Tell me everything. Tell me about this. Like, how do you worry about surveillance, and you live in societies where there's a lot of surveillance?
Yeah, well, I read an article the other day that Dubai has more CCTVs per populace than any other country.
I believe it.
But see, the good side of that is that you could leave your wallet at a bus stop.
You'll get it back.
You get it back.
Yeah.
You know, you hear these stories. If you look online, there's a site that everybody uses, kind of like a Craigslist of.
What's it called?
It's Dubizzle.
Okay, Dubizzle.
Dubizzle.com.
Okay.
Started by two Americans, two experts.
Right.
And what happened is you go to the lost and found, and you'll see someone found a wallet at this bus shelter or this metro stop. There was $5,000 in currency. There were credit cards. Please call this number. You must provide some ID, and you'll get it back. There's numbers.
Can you imagine that in New York?
Never. Never. It's gone.
Yeah.
Forever.
A story by Amadou Diallo. That's so interesting. So you may know, well, depends if this is the same Amadou Diallo. You have to be careful. Yeah, this is a This is a writer. So this is a different. This is not. That's right. No, right. No. So I forget what happened. Was he? He was killed.
By the police.
Right. I was confusing him with the other gentleman who was attacked by the police,
Okay.
but
Okay.
didn't die. You're right. Amadou Diallo was killed. And was a subject of a Bruce Springsteen song,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So this is tells you kind of common names, but that are also in the news. Stealth by Jillian Weiss. Look at the how it's all laid out, and yeah. Let's see here.
It was amazing when you did the piece from the printing plant.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun with
That was, yeah.
Mike Connors. He gave us a tour of the printing press. On a Wednesday night. It was amazing. The Protest by Alex Berenson. So basically the whole thing is dedicated to surveillance. So check that out online, folks. I'm sure Neil's posting the links on Facebook. And my daughter wants to share something fun that she's working on.
Yeah, so actually this Friday.
Who are you?
I'm Durga. I'm his daughter, as you just said. I'm one of the co-executive directors of a political activist organization geared at Generation Z, and we do a lot of action and things like going to DC and lobbying, or just phone banking, and then holding local events and student voter registration drives. So we're a national organization. We have some chapters on the West Coast now. We're largely East Coast based, but now it's great to see things happening in California. So it's a chapter-based organization, and it's with high schools all over America. We're working on a London chapter, but we'll see if that happens.
And it's named for the Gen Z,
Yeah,
right?
Gen
Generation
Z,
Z.
yeah.
It's a Coalition Z, it's called.
And I mean, if you want to learn anything more, our website is coalitionz.org. And this Friday, we're hosting an event called Know Your Rights. And it's surrounding Title IX, which is the law around gender equity and equality in education. And that's just, and also it's how you, in cases of like sexual harassment and assault, that's the law that protects you and helps you get your justice, basically.
So what is the event and where is it?
The event is on this Friday, January 10th,
In New York.
In New York. So it's in Brooklyn, called the Mayday Space, and it's from 6:15 to 8:40. So please come. It's completely free. There will be snacks and beverages, and congressional candidate Erica Vladimir will be speaking, and Jaslyn Kaur from Know Your Nine, a great organization that works to bring this to schools.
So you want everybody who has children, grandchildren in the Gen Z age group, they should come.
You know, any students, any college students as well. This is really surrounding policy and also in the political sphere. How do you deal with cases of harassment and violence? So
Okay, what do you think?
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I love the fact that young people today are getting involved. I was in Hong Kong, and when they had the big disruption maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. And I was on the 3rd floor of this hotel, and I was overlooking everything. And I was amazed by the demographics of the people that were running these things. No prescribed leaders, so to speak, no leaders of the movement, but it was all young people. So what I told the HR executives in the room, I said, this is your future workforce. So these policies and procedures, the rigidity of the way that you do business and treat employees, all that's going to have to change because these are activists.
Right.
And so they say these are college students. I said, imagine 5-10 years from now, these were people that you probably would be looking at for leadership positions inside of your organization. So I looked at that protest as from a leadership perspective and an org perspective, because this is the new product that's coming into your space.
And so reminder again, how do they find out? What website do they go to? And you're also on social?
Yeah, we're on social media. Our Instagram is coalition.z. So that has all the information about the event and
The website also?
Yeah, and our website as well.
And we'll also, I'll tweet it out and share it.
Yes.
And I also learned about Obey. What are you wearing?
Well, this Obey is a streetwear brand. I'm kind of a streetwear addict, I guess, but
This is what you asked for Christmas, right?
Yes, this is what I asked for Christmas. Thank you, Dad. Thanks to my mom, really. But yeah, it's streetwear, and I think he did a lot of protest artwork, and a lot of it goes to charity, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but the person who did a lot of the art at the beginning was a really huge activist.
All right, let's see. Vandana has anything to add to what she just heard about? Or...
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of Bombay. I don't own any of their clothes, but I was thinking about how young people today really are planning these protests and the kind of thought and effort that goes into that. Sure, people are showing up, but I was just thinking about, especially in India, there are protests happening all over, and I was just thinking about the kind of effort it must take for people to actually come and do this. And I was do you plan? Are you part of the planning committee?
Yeah, so I mean, we do pretty much all of the planning, and we have a board under us that works on social media and publicity. I mean, but a lot of it is, so we have no adults in the organization, so it's a lot of us doing almost everything. But I mean, one of the things that kind of scares me about youth activism is at least in America right now, the trendiness of it has kind of succeeded with Trump being in office so long. It's like we've all almost become very complacent with his policies, and yes, I love the climate movement, and I'm so happy that there's a lot of energy behind that. But after the climate march, how much people do, and there are a lot of people organizing around that, but there's still a lot of attention is getting diverted, and it's honestly, it can be so hard to get people to actually go out and do things sometimes.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. It ends up being a lot of the few people who actually are passionate about it, and then the people who a lot of our chapters have kind of succeeded and stopped.
So it's work, right? You have to get.
But it is a lot of work, and I wish we could spur the same sort of passion. Hopefully, the 2020 election will do that. I'm really hoping, but. I mean, there's sort of complacency now when things don't affect you personally. People don't see the true effects, things going on at the border, but also within New York City, in our subway stations. But people sort of refuse to acknowledge or take action. So.
Okay. Well, good luck with.
But if you know anyone who's interested in joining, go to our website, and if they want to actually get involved in youth activism, they can start a chapter, and we'll work with them on hosting events at their school, student voter registration drives to give back to the people and things like that. So,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's get to.
So I had a question as it relates to that. So
I think he has a question.
How could someone like me or someone in the audience get involved that may be geographically in a different region?
Well, what we did for our last event, it was Meet Your Representatives Town Hall, was we had a GoFundMe. Okay. So just donating resources to us is really helpful because it helps us bring in people and actually get the spaces, because New York City spaces are so expensive.
I can only imagine.
It was
so if anyone can donate space, that's useful. And also telling everybody because you have lots of friends in New York and other places. What I see with these movements is that even if you are not the demographic that they're aimed at, you know people who are who know people who are in that demographic. So all of us can help. And Debbie says, great activism, Durga. Thank you, and we'll tell young relatives.
Lovely. Thank
All
you.
right. Okay.
There's also I mean, I know you don't have the time for this, but there's like volunteering, which is like when we send out actions and phone banking and canvassing in your area. That's always helpful, but obviously, I know you won't have time for that. But
No, but you said you have a GoFundMe page.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Right. And is that linked?
Is
Is it linked on their website?
There is one on our website, but I think the Facebook link has gotten more attention, so maybe I can.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Pete Buttigieg and the 1%. The candidate has drawn criticism for raising funds from the rich and famous, a group he cautiously courts. Have you ever been in a wine cave?
No, I saw the discussion on the wine cave, and I was really perplexed. Why is that an issue?
Right. But anyway, someone had a great line on Wait, Don't Tell Me. Pete Siegel, the host, said, oh, this is what Democrats are best at, whining and caving in.
Yes.
Let's see. Look who's in this photograph. There's Anna Wintour and Jordan Roth and Richie Jackson and Tiffany Haddish are all in one picture.
Okay.
So that's an astrologer from the internet era. Chani Nicholas fuses astrology with social consciousness. You must have noticed how much astrology there is in the Indian community as you kind of travel and see a lot of people believe in that.
You know, I had lunch yesterday with a friend of mine who's a high-powered attorney in New Jersey, and she was telling me about what her astrologist was saying, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, people want some, like extra help from other places.
So my thing was, you come to me, I'll give you all of that. you just give me the money.
Yeah, exactly. Look at this constant hype at the TikTok mansion. So there's a TikTok mansion. Modern love, trying to keep up with grandma's love life. She was 80 years old and marrying for the third time. I didn't expect to envy her. What a great story. I also love these tiny love stories. If you don't have time for the whole thing, you can just read this. So I'm going to read this out. Peyton posted a picture with his flamingo Lisa wearing a Santa hat. Lisa had an Instagram account, so I followed it. He texted, I see you following my lawn flamingo on Instagram. I replied, you tagged it in a photo. What other option did I have? The text got longer. Christmas slid into New Year's and eventually to an evening watching the stars. I asked him why he texted me. He asked why I responded. We both knew. I'm thankful for that flamingo. She's the only girl I'll ever love, he once said, but that's not true anymore. Lovely little story. And there's the tiny, lovely a picture of his plastic flamingo. In case you're wondering, it is plastic. So let's see. So I'm going to ask you, this is the social cues section where there's an etiquette question. There's no right or wrong answer. We're going to read the question and then you're going to answer and then we're going to see what they said. This is Philip Galans, who's a great fun guy. Okay, where was my invitation? We received a Christmas card from friends we've known since the 70s. It included the usual photos and update, but also a glowing description of an elegant retirement party for the wife earlier in the year. My husband and I were not invited. We didn't even know about it. Now I feel hurt to have been excluded. Was the card tacky or am I being too sensitive? We now go to our expert on social etiquette.
If I were in that situation, I would just ask them why I was not included.
You would ask?
I would ask. I said, we missed it. Why did we miss it?
Okay. Because there's a chance you missed the invitation.
Yeah.
Right? There's a chance they sent it.
Always. Could have been in spam or whatever it was. So I would ask them, when was it? How was it?
Right.
Let me get something for whoever.
Right. That's okay. Yeah.
That kind of thing. So I would approach it that way.
Okay.
I wouldn't approach it from the angle. Of I'm upset because I wasn't invited. Right. No, life is too short.
Okay, let's get a view from slightly different demographic.
If I was left out
of an invitation like that,
I don't know if I would ask. I would sulk about it probably for
sulk
a while,
about it,
and then just drop major hints later.
So you advocate being more direct to it. All right, let's see what Philip says. Remember, no right or wrong experience. In my experience, retirement parties are generally attended by colleagues and immediate family. If you hadn't even heard about it, you're probably not in close contact. A retirement and its celebration would rank as newsletter worthy in most years. But if you're old enough to have been friends in the 70s, you're old enough to know we can't all be invited to everything. So that's kind of interesting. I have my 50th birthday coming up in October, and everyone's invited who's watching. We're going to have one big bash, which Rupa tolerates, but We're also going to have smaller dinners, but everybody, October 24th, you're all invited. When water is the answer to everything, obsessing over hydration continues into the new year. The best-selling bottled water, private label or generic brand. Are you a water guzzler?
There's a lot of discussion around water in the Middle East, because when you go out to dinner, a bottle of water, which is a normal bottle of water you get from a 7-Eleven, if you order that water, first of all, it's not free, and that water may cost you 12 dirhams, which is about $4.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So people tend to bring in their own water when they come to restaurants to eat.
Really?
Yeah, and the thought is, I don't mind being charged for things, but water?
Right.
A small bottle of water that I can buy for 99 cents, and you're going to charge me $3, $4, $5 for? So that's kind of my thought on that. But I do drink a lot of water. Water and milk.
A love so persistent, they had to marry twice. They divorced after 37 years together, but the breakup wouldn't hold. What do you think of that?
No comment.
No
comment.
All right, I understand.
Yeah.
After 20 years, always finding reasons to celebrate. Oh, there's a Indian guy here. Jennifer and Charnpal Singh Gill sort of skipped their last wedding anniversary. Frankly, I can't believe it's been 20 years. It doesn't feel like 20 years. It feels very fresh and new. Very nice. New Jersey couple and all these. So one of the things that's changed in this is that we now have mixed race couples that was not that common in the wedding section, and they also have same-sex couples. So that's always awesome to see. They've also democratized the kind of families they had in here. They used to always have only the upper 1%.
Yeah.
But here I see at least 2 Indians here, Peckham Pal and Supriya Menon. Oh, there's a Menon here.
So has that been discussed? Has there been anything written as to how that transition came about? Or
I don't know. I'm sure this is studied very closely, maybe closer than any other page of the New York Times. But we've definitely seen that, and it's probably editors change and things like that. Want to do a time check? We have about 15 minutes, and business. Since you're my business guy,
favorite section.
Okay, and look what they've done with the design. It's great. The deputy editor of business, Kevin McKenna, sat in this chair and read with us. Can Sweet Greens scale up? The chain that made salad chic, modular, and ecologically conscious is dreaming much bigger. Do you have this in the Middle East, Sweet Green? Not yet. But you have a lot of other brands there. YouTube satirist has Saudi's strict attention. Let's see. Let's go in. The case of hijacked pastries. There's a story about a manager who's a nightmare. And name anything that exhibits the worst of bad management. She's done it, including presenting my ideas brazenly of her own. She recently took a box of pastries. What do you do with a tough boss? It's very easy to think about colleagues and other things, but what is your advice for?
So there's an exercise that I just did a leadership development workshop in China, Macau, for one of the casinos. And one of the exercises we do is around that. The exercise is good boss, bad boss. Good boss, what made that boss great? What are your learnings from that particular boss? Bad boss, what made him horrible? What did you learn from them? And we use it as a kind of a discussion, what to do, what not to do. And the ending of the learning that comes from that is that, are you creating a good boss scenario for the people that work for you? Or are you creating the boss from hell? And it's more about reflection as to who you are as a person, the way that you interact with people, the way that you sense what's going on, hyper awareness of what's going on in your team. So we use a scenario like that from a bad boss perspective and a good boss. But the common theme in that is the bad boss is always a manager, but the good boss is a person like my father. One gentleman talked about his grandfather who babysat him every day. His grandfather owned a factory, and he would sit in on all the meetings as a kid. And the grandfather, after the meeting, would explain to him what happened in the meeting, what are his thoughts on it. And that's how he became I don't want to say famous and very wealthy businessman.
Wow.
But it came back from those learnings that he picked up from a grandfather.
That's amazing. Here's this. She hopes you buy a planner, a paper one. Anna Bond of the Rifle Paper Company. She wants you to use paper. That's so interesting. Someone had asked, what are your favorite apps? We already mentioned Get Pocket and TripIt. Do you have a third app of any kind that you want to recommend? You want to look at your phone? You can do that too.
Google Keep.
Google Keep. Yeah, I love Google Keep.
Google Keep. That is so Google Keep I use for making notes. OneNote, Microsoft OneNote is for work.
Right.
It's a reference to an article, a reference to a book. There's a quick note about a project coming up. But Google Keep is my note-taking app.
Yeah, that's what I use as well.
Yeah.
And it works well on the phone, on the laptop, and all platforms, everything else. Are you a big movie watcher on those planes? You must be, yeah.
No. So my other is Televisor is my app that I use for downloading any YouTube video. TELEVZR, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't ever use their airline stuff. I always have my own playlist of all of the
things you want to watch.
videos I want to watch.
So some fun, some serious.
Some fun, some serious. I'm a big fan of any documentary.
Right.
And I try and look at it from this vantage point. If I give you an hour, what am I going to learn from it?
Right.
So the movies that are coming out now, like the Star Wars movie and all those kind of things, never really got into that. Mine has to be kind of people, relationships, findings from that, good side, bad side, all those kinds of things.
Wow, so interesting. Adam Driver, speaking of Star Wars film, gives it his all. He's had a huge success in Star Wars film, and also this movie called Marriage Stories. People are really praising that. Rupa can't stand him, my wife. She just can't stand his face, but he's a really good actor, and yeah. So let's see. Look at Jamie Foxx here. Here's Jamie. You've seen this? Yeah, it's called Just Mercy. And Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx here.
Michael B. Jordan's sister, I got her a job at Martha Stewart. She worked at Martha Stewart for a while.
Before he was Michael B. Jordan.
No, not Michael B. Jordan. Michael B. Jordan's sister.
I understand.
Yeah.
But he was not yet famous.
He was not yet famous.
He was probably still young.
Yeah, he was probably still in whatever
College or something.
Development category he was in.
Yeah.
I know his sister very well.
Right. Oh, that's he's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's great to see him. Are you a big movie watcher?
Yeah, I watched Marriage Story. I liked it.
Okay, nice.
was
And
really
are
intense.
you watching Golden Globes tonight?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay.
I haven't seen most
Enough,
of the. Yeah.
Okay. Jay says, do you remember any of the channels or producers you like on YouTube so he can look it up?
You know, I just go by titles and things that interest me.
So it's not like you're subscribing to a bunch of things.
I subscribe to a lot of
Sure.
them, but no one that I can really think of.
Mark, who's watching from North Carolina, who watches every week, says you're a great speaker because Stefan said, you know, he's just so fascinated by your the way you talk and you share. So was asking, how many times do you give talks a year, roughly?
That's kind of an interesting space. So when I first lived in Saudi Arabia, there was nothing to do. And so I sent out a notice. I searched online to find out HR conferences that were coming up. And I sent a note to maybe the top 3 that were coming up and said, here's who I am. Here's my background. I currently live here, prior lived in the U.S. I speak at conferences. And this was a Thursday. By Sunday night, I had 3 speaking opportunities.
So step in and ask, right?
Step
Offer
in and
yourself.
ask. If you go to any conference and ask the producer of the conference, just tell them, don't ask them, tell them that if anyone backs out, which always happens, I will always tell them, if you can get me there, I'll speak. And that was the way that I approached it. I wasn't asking them for an opportunity to speak.
Right.
So they pulled me in. I ended up going to Dubai first time, Bahrain, and I went to someplace, Istanbul.
Nice.
And that kind of started it off. So at one of those speeches, there was someone in there that came up and gave me a business card. And she said, I really like your presentation. I would like to represent you. And represent me doing what? She said, we're a speakers bureau. And we would like to represent you for speaking engagements. And the name of that speaking bureau is MENA Speakers in the Middle East. And they represent me for speeches. So I just got back from Karachi for a CXO summit, which is the EFO, all the E's. C's.
Yeah.
CXO summit. And my talk was on the future of work from a strategic perspective.
Nice.
So all that speaking came about just sending someone a note.
Because you were bored.
Yes, because I was bored.
Right. Little Women is getting a lot of attention. Also, a lot of men are dismissing Little Women, and so there's been a backlash to the dismissal.
Right.
Well, because men are, and then because men.
Yeah, because it's men.
And then this movie, Parasite, everyone's been raving about. It's a South Korean film with director Bong Joon-ho, and he's been nominated for Best Director tonight. And everyone who's seen this has loved it. And so I want to see if we can see that. There's just so much going on. Do you have time for books? Do you get?
Yeah,
You get,
all of my books are done through Kindle.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the best thing you read in the last year?
I'm reading now $1 Trillion Coach, Bill Campbell, who
Oh.
was the CEO coach.
I knew Bill. Bill is the most interesting person people
Very.
haven't heard of.
Wow.
You're right, $1 Trillion Coach. He was Steve Jobs's right-hand man and was a football coach at Columbia.
University.
Yeah, and I knew him. He was also the most joyful person I ever met. At the end of every presentation that I would make to the board, he would backslap you and high five you. Can you imagine a board member doing that? Because he's a football coach, so he had that mentality.
Yeah.
$1 Trillion Coach. Great
Amazing,
recommendation.
amazing.
Great
and
recommendation.
My other book, it's a book by Gallup. It's called "It's the Managers."
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Challenges in the organization.
All right. And when are you writing a book?
I get hit with that all the time. I don't really have the time. I've been contributing author to quite a few books, chapters. But for me to sit down and write something.
But on those 14-hour flights, you could just dictate and someone could, or take all your speeches and turn it into a book. By the way, I'm just pushing this on you because everyone asks me, so I just like having someone else to blame.
But I write an article every week.
So that's great. That's a book.
I write an article every
a page a day is a book a year.
Really?
Page a day is a book a year. I learned that from the great Chip Scanlon. All right. We'll just very quickly go through the bestsellers. Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, The Guardians by John Grisham, Crisscross by James Patterson, The Institute by Stephen King, A Minute to Midnight by David Baldacci, all kind of famous writers.
All of my favorite authors when I read this
type of book. Yeah. Educated by Tara Westover, Becoming by Michelle Obama. It's on our shelf here. Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell, Me by Elton John, and Sam Houston and the Alamo Avengers by Brian Kilmeade from Fox News. And look at the sketchbook here is a story told in emoji. So we can, as we sort of get winding up here, we're almost done here. And it was the best of times. Okay, you read this since you're the young person. You read this. Okay.
It was the best times. It was the worst times. It was the age of intelligence.
Okay. So I think they just taken the opening of A Tale of Two Cities and just put that there. So you have to have the exact words. You would have to see it.
I use this on some of my presentations.
Right. Yeah. And so that's always true, isn't it? Yeah. It also depends on your point of view. Look at this. This is 18 girls' lives through girls' eyes. That was really good. All right, let's look at the Times Magazine, and then we'll let you get out of here. You have your whole day to start.
So small now.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. California changed its laws to give inmates more serving life sentences a chance at parole, but first they have to convince state officials that they are reckoned with their pasts. Let's see in here. The magazine's always interesting. They have great the way they put everything together is so beautiful. And let's see, there's a poem here. So I always read the poem, and I say poems should only be read by the poets or by the experts. Yeah. But I'm going to read this cold. The Far Norway Maples by Arthur Z. Silver poplars rise and thin to the very twig, but what thins at your fingertips? The aspirations of a minute, a day, a year? Yellow tangs veer in the water and catching. Sunlight veer again, disappear from sight. The unfolding of a life has junctures that rupture plot. A child folds paper and glues toothpicks, designs a split-level house with white walls and pitched roof, but his father snatches the maquette and burns it. If you inhale and spore this moment, it tumors your body. But if you exhale it, you dissolve midnight and noon. Sunlight tilts and leaves the tips of the Far Norway maples. Wow. Lily Tomlin on making tender characters in a tough comedy world. Well, you're an expert on work. 9 to 5 was a landmark movie and was at a different era, right?
It was a different era, but it was kind of talking about some things that are popping up today,
including Me Too and women's rights and
bad bosses.
Bad bosses, yeah, the ultimate bad boss, yeah. And she's in a show now with Jane Fonda called Frankie and Grace.
Oh, wow.
Which is very popular. Do you do your healthcare in the Middle East, or do you do it in the U.S.?
In the Middle East, your health insurance, you can have it based in Middle East and Middle East only, or you could have it on Middle East and USA, which is extremely expensive if the USA is thrown into it. but mine covers Middle East, Asia, Europe.
Okay. Ethicist question, Kwame Anthony Apaya. Someone asks, my husband and I have been friends with another couple for many years. We've spent vacations together as well as holidays. My friend and I are very close, like sisters. Recently, a mutual acquaintance who knows my friend's husband told me that he'd been cheating on my friend and on and off for years with someone who worked with him. I know if I reveal this information, my friend will take their child and leave her husband. Do I sit on this information or pretend the affair isn't happening? Or do I tell her? Let's expand this a little more to just generally, what is our obligation for relationships of various kinds, not just kind of marriages? What is your advice? You've seen the world.
I would not venture there.
Really?
No, I wouldn't venture there because I wouldn't want them to maybe break up, and they could always point back to me as being root cause.
Right.
Because I was the one that brought it to fruition.
Right.
So I would stay away from it.
Right.
You know?
Even if you're sisters, even if you're that close.
Well, yeah, it would depend upon the situation,
Right.
the level of the different levels.
And some people don't want to know, right? They don't
Yeah.
want to be told.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if
Well, let's get another perspective here. Let's ask. What is?
It depends on how close I am to the person.
Yeah.
I would either go to the guilty party and be like, "Hey, I found out."
So you think that's better? Go to the guilty party
First,
Oh,
and then
okay. I
be
didn't even
like,
think of
"Are
that."
you going to talk to your partner about it?"
Yeah.
Because it doesn't sit comfortably with me, and give them a chance to.
Okay.
That's
solve
an
it.
interesting
That's a good approach.
Yeah, that's a good approach. Okay, how to talk to someone with Alzheimer's. When we were growing up, this wasn't something we talked about. I think autism and Alzheimer's were not, even if they were not as, maybe they were there, but they were not things we talked about.
I
Right?
think it was there, but we didn't really understand it the way that we understand it now.
Right.
One of the things I find here, watching TV, is that, and you don't really see a lot of ads on TV in the Middle East or in Asia. It's not really ad driven the way that it is here, but every other ad is about some sickness
Right.
and some prescription.
Right.
Tell your doctor about this. And you come away from that, between that and the news of everybody being killed, you're paranoid before you even go out of the house.
That is true. That is absolutely true.
Jeez.
It's true. Tejal Rao, who's a great food writer, says, tangy and juicy, stuffed with seasoned herbs and hearty leaves. This Armenian specialty is a perfect snack. What is it called? It's called Jingolov hats. So they look really, really good. And so much great food in the Middle East, right? What's your favorite thing to eat of all the?
I live in an Indian neighborhood, so
Okay.
I tend to eat Indian food.
Oh, nice.
When I'm in Asia, I always eat the food of the country I'm in.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I'll know people that, they're in Dubai on vacation and they go to an American. Why would you go to an American restaurant? You could do that when you're in U.S.
Right.
Yeah.
Why I went to Avalanche School. That's kind of interesting. We really have to stop so that he can get on with his day. So we're just going to wind up here. But I'm going to give, before I stop here, I'm going to give him a chance just to think about it. But I want him to tell us about his work. Ron, a little bit more about your work and how people can hire you. And are you overbooked or you're still available for certain things? I'm going to give you a chance to think about it for just 1 second. I just want to also give a shout out to the Wall Street Journal. We're hoping to do a Wall Street Journal read along one of these days. We've done Washington Post, New York Times, of course, every Sunday, and the Wall Street. We've done the Globe and Mail in Toronto, as well as the Bergen Record. But we'd love to do the Journal. And now that your friend Jacqueline's the managing editor of the magazine, would like to do that. And look at this: the challenges that working mothers still face. In her final article, after 3 decades on the beat, Sue Schellenberger looks at what's changed and what hasn't for women trying to manage office and home lives. Isn't that fascinating that in 30 years we've made a lot of progress, but in some ways we still haven't? Sue is a wonderful writer. She's written 1,000 columns for the Wall Street Journal on work and family, and she is terrific. Ideas for balancing work and family only help if they reach more working parents. So with that, we're going to turn the camera over to Ron and.
Well, I'm based in Dubai and Singapore. My work is basically evolves around leadership development, organizational dysfunction.
There's a lot of that.
And if you read the book, It's the Managers, it talks about that, working with teams to get them to be more effective. So that's what I tend to do. I have a list of fairly large clients in the Middle East, a lot of major brands I don't want to mention, but we do a lot of work with these people. calendar is pretty much booked. I was saying it earlier. I was looking to do a project in Iran for the major telecom there, and I sent that out in December. And so I know that's pretty much dead in the works.
Mr.
Now.
Trump had other plans.
Yeah, because probably it would be difficult for me to even get a visa going in there because my visa's expired.
And you have an American passport, of course.
Yeah, American passport. So there may be some restrictions there. So that's kind of the areas that I work in. I tend to stay in the Asia region the vast majority of the time. I do have a project coming up. I'm going to be in Geneva, I was telling you, possibly in the next couple of weeks to do some work for a major bank there. So it's kind of wherever the business comes in from. And as long as it's, so we kind of focus on organizational dynamics. What's happening inside of the organization? What are the major challenges? What are you trying to get done that you're not getting done? What are some causes of that? And we dig down deep and we go through our process to come up with some possible solutions. And we build you for it.
Yeah, so even if I can't afford you to come in and do a full project for my company, I could hire you to come and speak for a day, or you have that speaker bureau.
I have the speaker bureau,
Yeah.
and if somebody contacts me offline, if it's a nonprofit, I would probably, for the most part, do it for nothing.
Wow.
Depending if it's in the Middle East and I can get there by
or Europe.
Yeah, but if I got to fly in,
then that's on them, right?
That's on them.
Yeah. And how do people find you? Strategy Focus Group.
StrategyFocusGroup.com. My email address is ron.thomas@strategyfocusgroup.com.
Great.
I'm on Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn.
Right.
Matter of fact, I have a project coming up in 2020. I'm working with LinkedIn in Dubai. And I'm going to be their leadership, I don't want to say expert, leadership podcast that we're going to be creating.
Nice.
Yeah, so I don't know whether we're going to do a monthly run or how it's going to be set up, but I had that meeting the day before I left and we kind of got that squared away.
Nice. Well, this is so exciting to see all the stuff you're doing. And folks, as you can see, he travels the world. So even if you can't hire him, you can invite him out to dinner. And you have to take him to a market, not to a restaurant.
Exactly.
And Ron, I'm so grateful that you're here in person. And we first met when you spoke at my conference, Social Media Weekend, in 2011.
It was 2011.
Yeah,
wow.
So that's a long time ago.
Yeah. And we had a party here.
Yeah, and we had a party here. But thank you so much for being part of our social media community, the New York Times Read Along. And we appreciate you very much and just want to wish you the very best in everything you're doing, and being an inspiration for those of us who sometimes don't like to venture out too much. You've shown that you can try anything.
You can try anything,
right? Give us a couple of more of your sayings, maybe that you help people understand the world.
You're in charge of you, and everyone has to always think about what's the next version of you. What's 2.0 version of you?
Don't wait till something happens to you, right?
Yeah, start thinking about it now. And kind of formulating something. What's going to happen after this goes away?
Because it will go.
It will go away. Yeah, there's nothing that you're not going to stay in any place 35 years. So forget about that.
Right. By the way, I haven't had a chance to read all the comments, but I want you to go back, make time today, and just read the comments when you're sitting on the plane. Everyone says how great you are, and how you inspired, and how much you've inspired all of them. It's so cool. Okay. So thank you for doing that. But make sure you read. I want you to read it. I will. And you're in charge of you is a good saying for all of us to know. And we wish you the very best and hope you'll come back again and join us at some point. And I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody. But if you'll just stick around for a minute, you can start packing up as you do that. Vandana, do you want to just say goodbye?
Bye.
And you're in the market for media-related work, freelance or full-time?
Yes, freelance or full-time. I'm in the US for another year.
We're just going to pull you out so you can come in the sun a little bit. Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I've work authorization for a year, so I'm open to anything, exploring all opportunities.
Okay, good.
I'm on Twitter at Vandana_Menon.
All right. Yeah. And you did some tweeting so people can go back and read your writing on deadline. Yeah, and you took shot some pictures and stuff, and you can send them into Neil as well. So thanks very much. Appreciate your time today. Yeah. And just want to say goodbye to everybody. Thanks so much for watching. I want to really, really thank our incredible team that pulls this together. For those of you who have saw the production values now are so good. I'm now the weakest portion of this using this camera, because Neil and Steve and Paula, all as a labor of love, are putting this together every week Thank you so much to them. Next week, we're going to have the incredible Amy Vershup, the travel editor of the New York Times, is going to be doing the read along with us as they discuss the 52 weeks, 52 places to go in 2020. And last year's 52 places traveler, Seb Modak, is going to be on the show. I'm so upset to miss it, but I'll be logging in from India. Neil's going to come in for this. Follow Amy and Seb and Neil and Steve Taylor and Big Green Pen, Paula Kiger. Everybody takes so much effort to make all of this happen. We're so grateful to all of you for watching wherever you are in the world. Every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Tell your friends, tell your family. We're on LinkedIn and on Facebook every Sunday. Thank you very much. Looking forward to hearing from you. My email is sree@sree.net, and my Twitter is @Sree, and SreeNet on Instagram. And if we aren't connected on LinkedIn, let's connect right away. Thanks very much, everybody. I'm going to let Neil end the show because he's now got control.